What's up, YouTube? Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be around the world. Today, I just want to tell you how thankful I am to have been born in a country where I can say whatever I want and own guns, because that's not how things have been throughout history, and free speech is actually a relatively new concept that I enjoy thoroughly. Today I'm going to talk about a few different things. It's kind of a rant, but I think it's all a little bit interconnected here. Um, First of all, I want to start with food stamps. I think a lot of people lately have been quick to jump on that bandwagon of criticizing people with food stamps, trying to get everybody off food stamps, wanting to cut food stamps, and acting like that is the biggest problem with America's budget. When in reality, that's not even close. And, if you really want to save money, we should stop the wars. But I just want to talk about farm subsidies and really why I think that, I understand why people, see problems with the food stamp program with so many people being on food stamps, and there are people who abuse it straight up. But I still feel like right now is not the time to go after that because there's so many bigger problems, and going after somebody who can barely afford to eat is not it's not the way to go. It makes you sound like a heartless bastard. And well, let's just look at the corporate welfare here, because farm subsidies is a $20 billion a year industry in America. It's not an industry, it's fucking the government takes your tax dollars and gives it to farmers. And I think a lot of you realize that the middle class has been disappearing throughout, I don't know, the past several decades. And I had an interesting stat here that I just wanted to read real quick. But in 1930, 25% of the population in America lived on 6 million small farms. And by 1997, it was only 2% of the population living on farms, and they lived on about 157 large farms. But amongst these farmers, we spend $20 billion a year subsidizing food, subsidizing farmers. And that's why I think that, we're paying farmers to make food. If you're poor and you're hungry and you want food stamps, you should be able to go get it. Now, I'm open to improving this system because, well, people sell food stamps, and there's if you really are hungry, I feel like maybe we should be giving you excess food, excess, actual product. Here's some corn, here's some eggs, here's some cheese, not food stamps. But I don't care. We give out food stamps right now, and I'll tell you, I actually like food stamps. I've had them in the past, and I'll just tell you what made me go out and apply for them in the first place. I was in college, and I had just gotten MIP, minor in possession of alcohol, and I was just walking down the street drunk, minding my own business, I think like 20 years old, and I was actually walking home, and the police stopped and did the whole, why don't you want to take a breathalyzer thing? I didn't want to take a breathalyzer, I just want to go about my way, and long story short, that's not cool, and I ended up in the back of a police car, and I got taken home, not to jail, I got taken home, and, when all was said and done, I went to court for it. They wanted $200 from me, pretty much, and wanted me to go take some stupid-ass class where I had to pay another $100 or something for alcohol counseling or some bullshit, in a year, this shit will be legal, but whatever. My point is, the government came after me, and it wasn't, we just want to slap you on the wrist, we want to tell you to stop drinking because you have a problem. It's we want fucking $200 from you. That's what runs our society. We want your money. And, afterwards I was like, well, fuck this, I'm going to go get food stamps. I didn't think I'd be qualified at first because I came from a nice, I guess, upper class high school and upbringing, and, it just never occurred to me 2 years down the road I'm going to be in college thinking, I probably am qualified for food stamps, and I was. And I went and got them, and I was like, haha, I got my money back from this government that, the way I looked at it, they've been fucking me all along. I've gotten speeding tickets, some of them I deserve, but I've gotten speeding tickets that were just straight bullshit before, and I took them to court, and you can't win, and they just want money. It's a scam. If there's one change I can make to American policy right now, I would make it so that the government, the courts, the legal system cannot fine you any money. If you commit a crime and it's bad enough where, you're a danger to society and you get sent to prison, that's fine. But nowadays, it's revenue collection. They're all going after the pettiest bullshit, trying to crack down on some kid with a lemonade stand or somebody going 4 miles over the speed limit without a seatbelt on. And it's just fundraising. It's trying to get their bonuses and it's supporting this police state. If we keep going on this road, we're going to need more police. But, if we're paying for corporate welfare, I feel like we should be giving people food stamps. And to go after the poorest people and try to take away their food stamps when we know we have a problem with unemployment and underemployment, it just sounds heartless to me, and I don't like that to happen. Once you have all these people on food stamps and you're already paying corporate subsidies, corporate welfare to these farmers, it's almost a system that's too big not to get involved in, because I prefer organic food. And I think that it's also a God-given right to eat organic food. And the cheapest way to do that is to plant it in your backyard, because any of you who have gone shopping at like Whole Foods or tried to buy all organic vegetables and meat and cheese and all that know that that's very expensive, and most people cannot afford to do it on today's wages. And I'll tell you, I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about. If you're qualified, go get your food stamps and vote with your dollars, Buy organic food, buy whatever you want, free-range chickens, whatever. But I just, they're already giving it out to people. I feel like you don't need to go after that. If we want to reform the system in the future, yeah, there are some things that could be changed, but let's stop the wars first. Let's end the corporate welfare before we go after the poorest people in our country. It's goofy, but if you really are hungry or if you want food stamps, feed them. I think that's a very I can't even explain it. I don't want poverty to exist in my country anymore. That's as basic as I can say it. I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a backyard and you're not planting food, I would strongly encourage you to go back there, throw some raspberry bushes in the ground, strawberries in the ground, plant some corn, plant some potatoes, plant whatever. Raise a couple chickens or rabbits, get the eggs, whatever you want to do. But the best way to end poverty is gardening right in your backyard. If everybody did it, we could easily donate extra food, organic, high-quality, nutritious food to food banks or whatever, distribute that amongst everybody. We could end poverty. We know how to do it. The technology's there. But a lot of these farms that are getting subsidized, they're growing genetically modified Monsanto crap that I don't want to eat, making corn syrup that I don't want to eat. And it's like, if you're going to pay anybody to do this, well, I'm going to get my $200 off of my food stamps if I can. If I'm ever qualified, hell yeah, I'm going to get it. I'm going to go take those dollars. I'm going to vote with my dollars. I'm going to buy organic, healthy food from small farms that I want. Because you know what? A lot of these organic farms that are using permaculture principles and whatnot, maybe just a half acre, multi-crop, not monoculture. We're talking permaculture, 10 different crops interplanted together. Like, you can't get farm subsidies for that. I've looked at getting loans from the Department of Agriculture. Like, that's a whole process in itself too, and they got all these rules you have to follow, but the government needs to get the hell out of your garden. That's the way I figure it. And you know what? We need to cancel corporate welfare before we go after personal welfare. We bail out the banks and we kick people to the street. It's wrong. Like, it really is. But I guess the other thing I want to talk about, here's a good question. Is there ever an amount of land that's too much for one person to own? I don't know if I phrased it right, but I guess how much land do you think it's morally acceptable for one individual to own? 100 billion acres, a million acres, 100 acres, 1,000 acres, the state of Pennsylvania? I mean, what's it really fair for one person to own? Because with economies of scale and the middle class disappearing and more of our wealth getting concentrated amongst, 1% of the country, some elite bankers or whatever, it seems that down the road, there's coming a time where more and more Americans cannot afford land and we're just stuck paying rent. And the way the real estate bubble has kind of skyrocketed lately, a lot of people work their whole lives just to pay for their home. And, I look at it like, damn, I'll go live in a tent or build a wigwam. Like, the Indians had this shit figured out. They didn't have mortgages. They had to work their whole life at some, shitty $8 an hour job, slave wages pretty much, just so that they could afford to live in a home on their little plot of land. And I've really been thinking a lot about land ownership, property ownership, homes, mortgages, these big banks and corporate bailouts. Like, Bank of America right now owns about 17% of all home mortgages. That's according to Matt Taibbi. I don't know how to say your name, but he wrote an article in the Rolling Stone called Too Crooked to Fail. And Bank of America got a $45 billion bailout in 2008. We'll bail out these bankers, but it still's okay for them to own fucking 17% of homes in this country? Like, that's absurd. Too big to fail, too crooked to fail, whatever you want to call it. Like, wealth is getting more and more concentrated, and that is not just money or gold. That includes land, property, homes, mortgages, houses, apartment buildings. That's where we live and where we pay rent. And I just look at this trend, and if we don't adjust this, it's going to get more and more concentrated where very few people end up owning all the land in the world. Most of the apartments, most of the houses, I know that sounds far-fetched and down the road, but 100 years from now, with economies of scale, when you have more money than anybody else, you can go build the nicest apartment building. You can go, make manufacturing as efficient as possible. And when you have all that money to play with, you can outcompete other people. It's kind of like the game of Monopoly. You can start out with 5 people playing Monopoly. What happens? You go around, you go around, you go around, people start dropping out, they lose all their money, and before you know it, one person owns all the money, and the rest of you guys are going to be paying rent the rest of your life. You better get a job because you're going to be paying rent. If you don't own land, how are you going to produce food? You're going to get a job and you're going to work your whole life to pay for your house. But really, until every American owns their own land or home or some lot of property, I don't think we need foreigners coming in here to buy our land, to own our property. I think it's your God-given right to possess a fair piece of land, a fair-sized piece of land. I'm not saying that I should get 5 acres or anything. Give me a 1/16 of an acre, and I could build a wigwam or a fucking shanty or something. Now we got all these building codes. You want me in some $200,000 house? I live in a tent comfortably. I don't want to pay rent. I want to get straight off of this fiat money system. Fiat currency is the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the world. And I think the more we can transition away from that, it's going to be better. The Indians didn't have homelessness. Before the white man showed up over here, they didn't have mortgages. They didn't have homelessness. They went onto the land. They took trees and they built homes and they lived responsibly on the land. And there's nothing to say that we can't do that anymore, too. A lot of these environmental Nazis, will tell you, oh, you can't do that. The national forests need to be preserved, and all the land that's not being used right now needs to be preserved and whatnot. I don't care. Look at all these farms that have been bought with agricultural subsidies. You're paying farmers to go out and accumulate tons and tons of lands, and, I think you get what I'm trying to say. I really hope you do, but the last point, I'll just end it with this. I believe God created this land, and nobody paid God fiat currency to buy it from him. So nobody has the right to tell you that you need to pay them for the land that you live on. You don't have the right to go kick somebody else out of their house, but if there's vacant land, if there's a national forest someplace you want to build, a small little hut, a wigwam to go live at, plant a fucking garden, that should be your God-given right to do it. And I think we should bring back some sort of the Homestead Act. I have a video about that on my channel. It was one of the first videos I made, so it's not that good like any of my videos are that high quality, but I think it's something to think about. I really firmly believe that everybody should have the right to exist on property for free. I heard Mike Rivero of the What Really Happened radio show the other day talk about how bankers hate affordable housing. That's another interesting thing. If you want to look at how much home prices have increased over the past 100 years. It's inflation. It's a scam. Every year it gets more and more expensive to live, and you have to keep up with that. That's the system. And I just see more and more Americans that aren't owning their houses. They don't, they have mortgages and they can't afford the cost of living, and I think it's screwed up. But here's my question. Get back to what percent of land is it okay for one individual to own? Or how much land is it okay for one bank that just got bailed out with $45 billion of our taxpayers' money to own? This is fascism. When we have the merger of government and big business like that, it's not going to end well. It doesn't end well throughout history, and I think we need to look at this and really change it. And let's see here. As of 2007, the richest 1% of Americans owned 34.6% of the country's wealth, and the next 19 richest owned 50.5%. So if you add that up, that means the richest 20% own about 85% of the wealth in this country. You're going to have to get a job to work for these people. It's messed up, but here's what I want to say. I think everyone should have the right to own land. I think we should go back to some sort of Homestead Act or whatever, divide up land so that we decide, no one needs to own more than, 5 acres or 1 acre in the city, or, an eighth of an acre on a lot in the city, or, 50 acres in the desert or whatever. But I think it should be your God-given right to possess land and to grow food on it or whatever you want to do. If you take the land away from the people, they are going to be They're going to be needing handouts for food because they can't grow it. They don't have the means of production. And we have unemployment and underemployment like this, especially when you add on the student loan bubble. We have a nation of wage slaves.